Hello and welcome to the Robotopolis
Apocalypse.
which doesn't really mean anything, but I like the way it sounds, so we're sticking with that. Maybe it's because my ideas are so sick and twisted they'll give you radiation poisoning, I don't know. Anyways, I recorded some very scary gameplay yesterday, just running around and scorching dudes for no reason, and I wanted to share it with you and use it as an opportunity to chat about some things. I want to talk about Assassin's Creed Shadows a bit, talk a little bit about this channel and my plans for the future, and probably some other silly random things along the way. So stick around for a few minutes, hang out, and let the sounds of these men screaming as they burn to death soothe you. You deserve some relaxation. So let's start out with some Shadows stuff. Now that more and more gameplay and the little developer diary things are coming out, I've seen a lot more people talking about Shadows, obviously. I guess that's the point of marketing. I made, I think, 3 videos now talking about some of my concerns with the game, mostly parkour related stuff, because that's kind of my specialty. And even though I've kind of dragged the game through the mud a bit, which I think is fair, I think it's deserved, I'm actually still really excited to play it. If any of my fellow Assassin's Creed creators are watching this right now, I know they're probably rolling their eyes at me for saying that, but it's true, I can't wait to play Shadows. Now, I'm in a bit of a unique situation here because I am the proud owner and operator of the mildly successful Assassin's Creed YouTube channel you have found yourself on at this very moment. So a lot of my excitement about Shadows comes from looking at it through the lens of this channel. When Valhalla was at this current stage of its promotional cycle, I was not nearly as into it as I am with Shadows, but I didn't have this channel back then. Still, I reluctantly purchased it upon its release, as is tradition for the last however many years since Assassin's Creed 2 came out. Mirage was a different story because I was a few months into this YouTube game at that point, and I viewed Mirage as a challenge. During Mirage's marketing cycle was when I set my first real goal for this channel: to make Mirage's parkour look as good as humanly possible, despite its shortcomings and deep-rooted foundation in the RPG movement mechanics. And I had a ton of fun chasing that goal. It's one of the reasons I love Mirage so much. I kind of forced myself to love it. I made myself play it and figure out all its weird little quirks until I got good at it, and that made me love it. I literally Stockholm syndromed myself into falling in love with Mirage. I might be being a little bit dramatic, but I do think there's a lot to love about Mirage, whether you've mastered the movement or not. But my focus is starting to drift a bit here. The point is, one of my favorite things that I've done with this channel so far has been taking Mirage and making the most of it. Learning the ins and outs, developing little tricks, and experimenting with different techniques, and putting it all together to make the best videos I possibly could. And I'm excited for another opportunity to do that with Shadows. Maybe if the architecture was a little better. So that's my goal with Shadows. I'm going to do my absolute best to pull whatever depth I can from its movement system and hopefully share and teach it to other people who want to make the most of this game. And even beyond movement, I'm optimistic that there will be a lot to enjoy about Shadows. This will be my first major AC release since starting this channel, so I'm going to keep an open mind about things and see where the massive open world takes me. Now, I know it's cool to be super cynical about games, especially when it comes to Ubisoft and even more specifically modern Assassin's Creed. And I do understand where that cynicism comes from, and I welcome people to criticize the game when it's deserving of criticism. But for me personally, I feel like life is too short to spend too much time dwelling in those types of spaces. Life is already miserable and difficult enough to get through. I just want to have fun with my stupid assassin game, and by God, I'm going to try my best to do that. You see, I learned a very important lesson a few years ago at the premiere showing of a little movie called Star Wars: The Last Jedi. I went to this movie with my dad, my brother, and his 2 kids, and I remember during the opening sequence there were like 2 or 3 things that happened that set off these alarms in my head, and I was like, oh shit, I got a bad feeling about this, and I was right. That movie sucked really, really bad. After the movie ended and we left the theater, everyone I went with was feeling fine. They had enjoyed themselves. But I took Star Wars more seriously than they did, and I was far more critical of it, and as a result, I was angry, like genuinely in a terrible mood for the next 12 to 24 hours as a 20-something-year-old man over a movie about space magic and laser swords. So after sitting and kind of dwelling in my bad mood for a while, it kind of gave me a reality check. I didn't like the way I was acting and the control over my mental state that I had given a piece of media. I came to the realization that it didn't really matter. It wasn't that important, it was just a movie. I was still disappointed. I wanted the movie to be good, but it wasn't, and there wasn't anything that I could do about it. And guess what? The world keeps turning. The amphibian hops on. Upon rewatching the same Star Wars movie, I was able to confirm that it did in fact suck. It's terrible. But there are some things about it that I enjoy, and with my overreactions aside and my newfound perspective on what entertainment should be, I was able to watch the movie without having an aneurysm over it, and I enjoyed the parts of the movie that I thought were cool, and I laughed at the parts that were stupid. You might consider this a cope, and you'd probably be right. You might not be willing or able to compartmentalize your feelings about a piece of entertainment, and that's okay, I understand. If you're someone who demands a specific level of quality or demands certain features or mechanics in a game in order to purchase it, that's fine. I understand. But for me, a guy with 16 years emotionally invested in this franchise, a guy with a YouTube channel dedicated to Assassin's Creed, I'm pretty determined to make the most out of it. I also see this as a kind of opportunity to help bridge the gap between newer RPG era fans of the series and help them see the truth about modern parkour and hopefully funnel them into the rabbit hole of classic movement. There's like this phenomenon that happens in music pretty often with metal bands, like these really crazy heavy bands will often mature and transition into either like radio rock or just fully go pop, because it's more commercially appealing. And if they find a decent amount of mainstream success, people who learn about them from their newer music explore their back catalog and expose themselves to their older, heavier stuff and become metal fans. This is a role I've been playing since Mirage came out, and it's a role that I'm definitely interested in continuing to fill. There's nothing quite like opening the eyes of the youth to the truth about how good parkour can be and how important it is to this franchise, whether Ubisoft realizes it or not. So all this to say, yes, I'm going to be playing Shadows on release. There's nothing you can do or say to change my mind. It's happening. I bought the last 8 Assassin's Creed games on day 1, and I'm gonna do it again. You cannot stop me. And as far as the non-Shadows related stuff goes, I've been feeling a bit of like content creation related dread lately, which I'm starting to realize is kind of just part of the game. I have a lot of ideas written down that I either don't quite know how to execute or I simply don't have the time to do them properly at the moment. The deeper I get into this YouTube stuff, the more ambitious my ideas and goals become, and that's great, but with ambition comes a higher demand of time and other resources that I just don't have a lot of right now. So I hope you'll be patient with me while I sort all this stuff out and figure out what the hell I'm doing. This channel was always designed to be just for fun, and it is, but I still want to hit a certain level of quality and continue to evolve and grow to feel any sort of satisfaction with what I'm doing. So I'm working on finding that balance and hopefully doing so without landing myself in a padded cell somewhere. And as far as other plans go, I'm kind of toying with the idea / already beginning to branch out of my little Assassin's Creed bubble a little bit. But I do want to keep this mainly an Assassin's Creed channel, at least for now. We'll see what the future holds. I'm not gonna, I'm not gonna say anything crazy and put myself in too much of a box. I really kind of like the idea of looking at other games like through the lens of a guy who plays too much Assassin's Creed, so I'm going to play around with that idea a little bit. I got a couple of fun things kind of in the works, maybe just a little bit, or at least on paper. So we'll see if anything comes from that. I've got some other science experiments I'm working on, a couple of sick and twisted little abominations in the works. So we'll see if those turn out to be anything that I can actually share. And with that, I mean, hell, what the hell? What else am I going to say? What else is there to cover? Are we having a good summer? I gotta go.